Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all. I'm your host, RidleyRavineIceCream, and welcome to the show. Today I want to show you one of my favorite Nintendo GameCube games, one of my favorite Nintendo series, one of my favorite games, period. A little real-time strategy game called It's one of the first games released for the Nintendo GameCube in 2001, and will go on to sell over 1 million copies, earning itself multiple sequels across multiple Nintendo platforms. Pikmin has become a regular staple of Super Smash Bros. Since its player character, Captain Olimar's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But all that's a story for another day. Today is all about the game that started it all, Pikmin 1. I've been playing Pikmin since about 2007. My friend Overlord owned a copy of Pikmin 1 and introduced me to another real-time strategy game, StarCraft. And seeing how I liked StarCraft, he thought I would enjoy Pikmin. It took some convincing. I was intimidated by the game's 30-day time limit. I didn't like the idea of being pressured, being unable to correct myself if I made any mistakes. But Overlord showed me the ropes and I was hooked. Growing Pikmin, commanding my army, racing against the clock, gathering parts, saving Pikmin lives. I just fell in love with the game and the franchise as a whole. I had such a great time with the first game I went and played Pikmin 2 right after finishing Pikmin 1. And eagerly waited several years for Pikmin 3, and when Pikmin 3 finally released, I got it shortly after it launched. But as far as the other games go, at the time of this recording, I haven't played Pikmin 4, Pikmin Bloom, or Hey Pikmin yet. As for why, well, let's see, Hey Pikmin I didn't even know released in 2017. All of Nintendo's marketing at the time was focused on Metroid 2, Samus Returns, so I ended up missing its release. Pikmin Bloom is a mobile phone game that somehow I didn't even know existed until I was doing research for this video. I don't know how it happened, but I might have to go and download it and give it a try when I finish this video. As for Pikmin 4, that one came out while I was in the middle of finishing university and I haven't had the time to sit down and play it yet. But hopefully I'll be able to change all that sometime soon. I've been a big Pikmin fan over the years and I want to share that love with you. Why I fell in love with it, and hopefully I can pique your interest in it. And if you are interested, you have multiple options. Pikmin 1 has been re-released multiple times. There's the original GameCube version, a Wii port that was a part of the Wii's new play controls. This added motion controls, most notably the Wii remote's pointer to control the cursor in Pikmin. This allowed the player to perform tricks like whistling Pikmin from afar or throwing Pikmin farther and saving time. It included quality of life improvements from the sequels, like allowing Pikmin to be changed while holding them for throws. And believe me when I say this, switching Pikmin while holding them is a godsend. I want to say handling bomb rocks is better in this version. The Pikmin wouldn't drop them or set them off if they were whistled like they did in the original GameCube version. And most recently, a Nintendo Switch port for the Nintendo eShop digitally, and a physical version bundled with Pikmin 2. The Switch version brings over the improvements from the Wii version and adds new ones. It corrected glitches such as enemy corpses and bridges pushing Pikmin through the floor and killing them. The cursor has more range than the GameCube, allowing for easier throws. Yeah, the small improvements like faster throwing speed for the Pikmin, and an easier time saving them from hazards like fire. The motion controls are replaced with Nintendo Switch gyro controls, which you can turn on or off depending on your preference. You can control the camera with the right stick now if you didn't like the original. Between these three versions, I would recommend either the Wii or Switch version. The GameCube original is still a fine version of the game. I've played it countless times over the years, but it's a little rough around the edges. It has glitches and it's missing quality of life touch-ups that were included in the Pikmin sequels. The Wii and Switch versions not only fix a number of these glitches, but also adds the quality of life improvements I've mentioned that makes them the superior version of the game in my opinion. You go to the Wii version if you want the pointer controls. It's much more natural than the Switch's gyro controls. Using the gyro controls limits the cursor to moving only when holding the whistle or throw buttons down. It works, but it doesn't feel as natural as using the Wii's pointer controls. The Switch version, meanwhile, is the most easily accessible version today, but it has the quality of life improvements, multiple control schemes for your preferences, and corrected glitches and other bugs. You can download it virtually for about $30. Or you can get the Pikmin 1 plus 2 bundle that includes Pikmin 1 and 2 if you prefer physical copies. For this video, I'll be primarily using the Nintendo Switch version with some bits of the Nintendo Wii version for a good measure. But before we can begin properly, we have a game development to cover. And Pikmin has an interesting development to say the least. Pikmin is the product of Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development Division, formerly known as Nintendo Research and Development Team 4. The same team behind the Super Mario Bros., Legend of Zelda, and Animal Crossing series to name a few, with Shigeru Miyamoto from Super Mario and Legend of Zelda acting as a producer. And that's the most consistent thing about Pikmin's development I can tell you. See, the story behind Pikmin's development over the years has changed. For the longest time, I've always heard Pikmin started from the Mario 128 tech demo. This was a demonstration showcasing the processing power and capabilities of the upcoming Nintendo GameCube console. The tech demo showed over 100 little Marios running around and performing different actions while reacting to the changing terrain. The story always went that the Mario 128 tech demo was the inspiration for Pikmin. However, that story changed over the years to include Nintendo wanted to expand on the idea of controlling over 100 different characters and create a prototype. This prototype would feature two playable ball-shaped characters called Adam and Eve. The player would command Adam and Eve and expand their numbers under the right commands. However, the prototype would be scrapped due to a lack of direction. Elements from the Adam and Eve prototype, such as a mammoth-like creature, would be later repurposed into the Bulborb enemies seen in the final game. And the game would take on a nature direction following Shigeru Miyamoto's interest in gardening and observing ants. That's why I always thought the story behind Pikmin's development was, but all that changed with the release of a Ask the Developers article published by Nintendo in 2023 as a part of Pikmin 4's marketing. According to the article, Pikmin's development actually predates the Mario 128 tech demo and first began during the transition from the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64. Developers Shigefumi Hino and Masaichi Abe, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, began discussions about a project that displayed over 100 characters on screen. The project already had a look for the characters. These ball-shaped characters with male and female designations that the developers thought looked like something you would see in Yoshi's Island. Makes sense, Shigefumi Hino was the character designer behind Yoshi and worked on the Yoshi's Island series as a character designer. These designs are similar to Tap Tap. Does anyone else see that? But perhaps most shockingly, the article doesn't mention Adam and Eve at all. The only reason the article gives for the change in direction was a lack of character in the designs, and that the developers were looking for something that was more cute and appealing to high school girls. Saying that the development team were unanimously in favor of Junji Mori's sketches that drew inspiration from Tim Burton to create the design of Pikmin we know them as. The Adam and Eve prototype was never shown to the public, the only available information is statements made in the interviews. And the ball-shaped description that Adam and Eve has matches up with the characters shown in the article. This has to be Adam and Eve, right? I don't know why else these characters have male and female designations. And if it is Adam and Eve, it's unbelievable to think we finally have a visual for them, and it's a huge deal for learning more about Pikmin's development. Nintendo is usually very secretive about their development process, and to see them finally shed more light on the said process excites me as a fan and aspiring game designer. If you have any interest in working in the game design industry, you should look up the development process behind games and learn from successful developers about the production process. Game design documents, flowcharts, concept art, sources of inspiration, everything and anything you can get your hands on. And as a fan, it excites me to learn more about my favorite games and provides me with new ways of experiencing the things I love. And we're not even done with this article yet. For further inspiration, the team would watch various artistic indie films, most notably the 1973 film Fantastic Planet. And from looking at clips of the film online, I can see the bits the team used for inspiration. It's an interesting film to say the least. Another big influence was the book called The Selfish Gene, to get an understanding of the ecology of living things. Regarding Mario 128, it's still relevant to the history of Pikmin. The technology used in the demo would be used to control and herd the Pikmin and proved it was finally possible to make the project a reality. It just wasn't the starting point like previously believed. And Miyamoto's garden was still a part of the development. It turns out that multiple developers visited Miyamoto's garden for photos and observed the ants to get inspiration for the nature focus the game's development ended up taking. Pikmin was taking shape with the game being shown at E3 2001, with the game being released in the fall of the same year. Nintendo had a lot of faith in Pikmin, creating the song I No Uta and created a new breed of flower to resemble yellow Pikmin with the flower called Bacopa Cabana, or the Pikmin flower. And of course, there was the usual commercials and trailers released for the game that build up for marketing, but Nintendo took another unique approach. The GameCube launch title Luigi's Mansion had a promotional video hidden away in the options menu, and Super Smash Bros. Melee had two trophies previewing Pikmin, one for the titular Pikmin and another for the player character Captain Olimar. All to get consumers excited for this new and unique game. Pikmin was released in Japan on October 21st, 2001, December 3rd for the US, with a PAL version in June 14th, 2002. Now, it may seem like I'm a bit scattered with covering development, but Pikmin's development was kind of scattered. Sometimes a game's development is straightforward with a clear vision from its inception. Sometimes you have a development process like Punch-Out, where Nintendo wanted to create a boxing game to utilize the abundance of TVs in their warehouses and had a straightforward development. Other times you have developers experiment with ideas, testing out several different things until finally honing in on the vision that defines the game. Finding the fun, as my game design professors would say, which is what happened here in Pikmin. I didn't even get into the weeds of the development process. If you want to know more, I would recommend you check out Did You Know Gaming's new Pikmin Facts video for additional information on the game's development, as well as looking at the Ask Your Developers article yourself. Links are in the description if you're curious. Ultimately, the end goal was to create a new game that lets you control over 100 different characters, make it different and unique from the rest of Nintendo's library, and get people excited for it. And what do you say we start the game now and see how well Nintendo accomplished that? Our story begins in space. A lone spaceship travels through the cosmos, but an unforeseen meteor collides with the vessel, causing it to crash land on a nearby planet. The ship's lone inhabitant, Captain Olimar, survives the crash and awakens to discover the wreckage of his ship, the Dolphin. Making matters worse, it's Olimar's discovery that his life support system can only function for 30 days before failing. Wasting no time, Olimar sets off to find the missing ship parts and repair his damaged vessel. During his search, Olimar discovers a plant-like object that sprouts a single seed. Plucking the seed, Olimar discovers a friendly creature he dubs Observing the Pikmin, Olimar learns how to command and expand the creature's numbers. And it's a good thing because Olimar soon comes across the Dolphin's engine and with the Pikmin's help, transports the part back to the Dolphin and begins the ship's repair process. Seeing the Pikmin's capabilities firsthand, Olimar enlists their aid in recovering the other missing ship parts before his 30-day time limit expires, where, depending on the player's performance, you get one of 3 endings. The best ending sees Olimar finding all missing ship parts and fully repairing the Dolphin. He thanks the Pikmin for their help and departs, returning home. In the normal ending, Olimar leaves at the end of the 30th day, not finding all ship parts, but is able to escape the planet by finding all necessary ship parts. And finally, in the bad ending, Olimar attempts to escape at the end of the 30th day, but fails and perishes. And that's pretty much it for Pikmin's story. Olimar crash lands, discovers the Pikmin, and with their help repairs the Dolphin and returns home or dies trying. Like a lot of other Nintendo games, Pikmin's plot is more of a premise for said game. You have your setting, characters, and a goal to pursue. However, I would argue that Pikmin's story has a lot of depth to it. Olimar's predicament makes him very sympathetic and lets him stand out from other Nintendo protagonists. Olimar is just an ordinary guy, nothing more than a normal astronaut that crashed on an alien world. He doesn't have any powers or abilities. All Olimar does is pluck Pikmin from the ground, throw them, or command them. All Olimar is an everyman. A reluctant hero put through a harrowing experience, and we learn about him through said experience. Olimar chronicles his adventures at the end of every day, which not only provides the player hints about the Pikmin and the enemies, but it also lets us know more about Olimar himself. It's through these that we learn he has a wife, a son, daughter, and worries about them, hoping to repair his spaceship and return home to them. It's how we know he has something of a scientific mind, making observations about the world around him, how he feels about the Pikmin, how he learns about the enemies, or how he may have been fooled by a salesman into buying an expensive part for his ship. How the situation gets to Olimar and how he tries to maintain hope. How the events of the day affect him based on the player's actions. If Pikmin died by bomb rocks or faced extinction, he holds himself responsible as a leader and vows to do better not just for himself, but for the Pikmin. It gives the game's endings more weight as we know Olimar is returning safely home to his family and how much adversity he overcame to do so, or makes failure that much sadder knowing Olimar and his family will never reunite, with Olimar's fate being unknown to them. We get all of this, just from the game letting us know Olimar's inner thoughts. It provides depth to the character and makes Olimar stand out tall alongside other Nintendo protagonists. I would also add that this is the most atmospheric of the Pikmin games. There's a real sense of mystery, isolation, and dread to this game. You don't know anything about the world, everything you do know is learned alongside Olimar, and the rest has to be inferred. What creature had this skull? Where did this material around the arena come from? What even is this planet? We don't know. And there is no one around to discuss this in order to draw a conclusion. And though more details emerge as the series progresses, you still have to draw your own conclusions. But don't dwell too long. You can't forget about the Dolphin. You have less than 3 days to find enough ship parts in order to get off world and survive. Every action and thought are precious and needs to be carefully considered. Accompanying this is a soundtrack that was composed by Hajime Wakai, most known for his work on Star Fox 64, F-Zero X, Yoshi's Story, and both Pokemon Stadium games. And I think he knocked it out of the park. He really nailed the atmosphere this game has going for it. Having songs that sound pleasant and peaceful but have this underlying sense of dread to them. My favorite being The Distant Spring, as I feel it captures the mystery with the underlying sense of dread permeating throughout the song. Providing the sense of wonder and mystery of this planet, while reminding me of the hostile creatures and the time limit that threatens my livelihood. It doesn't help that you constantly have a time limit ticking down, but you're all alone on this alien planet with creatures of various sizes, shapes, and behaviors, all hostile with the only friendly creatures being the Pikmin themselves. And this is a good time as any to talk about the Pikmin. The Pikmin are the only friends Olimar has on this planet, and they're good ones to have. The Tim Burton influence gives the Pikmin a unique and appealing look, one that synergizes well with other colorful Nintendo characters, but also stands out due to its unique design and influence, and one of my favorites personally speaking. It makes the titular creatures just as endearing as they are useful. Give them a task and they'll work on it until it's finished, but they're not mindless drones. Seeing them celebrate when they complete a task, trip and fall, or even cry out as they're eating makes them feel alive and empathizes the player to the Pikmin, and makes you want to watch over them besides just needing the Pikmin as workers. You can treat them as workers, not caring about them and just throwing numbers at your problems. It'll work, but it's not efficient. Some people may say Pikmin are expendable, but not me, as Olimar cares for the Pikmin, and so do I. I always feel terrible when I see Pikmin die and always try to do my best to care for them, keep track of them, round them up, and minimize casualties. And the Pikmin in turn care for Olimar, following him around, defending him, carrying him back his ship parts, learning from him, and wondering why he leaves at the end of the 30th day. You form a real connection with the Pikmin, knowing they care about you helps give the game character, as even in the bad ending when they carry Olimar, wait, what are they doing? What the heck? Um, okay, so what just happened? Did they convert Olimar into a Pikmin to save him, or view him as food now that he outlived his usefulness? Is this like a Bulman situation where a parasite is now living inside Olimar? Did they try and save him? Like, what is happening here? And afterwards, we just go back to the title screen, forced to reload a previous save. Huh. Well, there's your indie movie influence. A strange and unanswered ending left open to interpretation. Of course, I say this without playing Pikmin 4 yet, but perhaps it's time we move on to the game itself. As a real-time strategy game, Pikmin plays differently compared to others in the genre, like StarCraft and Age of Empires. Instead of overseeing a large base and army, clicking on units to fight, gathering resources, or clicking on buildings to produce units, you play as Olimar in the field, commanding the Pikmin, rounding them up with the whistle, ordering them to fight enemies, retrieving dolphin parts, gathering resources, or reproducing Pikmin with their nest, called the Onion, by having the Pikmin carry either pellets or dead enemies back to it in order to grow more Pikmin. And then with enough Pikmin, recovering the missing dolphin parts. Yes, instead of building up an army to duke it out in order to win like you would in any other strategy game, Pikmin has you building up forces to find and retrieve missing pieces of the ship. Retrieving ship parts is your major means of progression in Pikmin. Recovering more dolphin parts will grant you access to other areas where you can find additional parts. Pikmin's gameplay is broken up into days. Each day starts early in the morning and you have until nightfall to reclaim the missing ship parts. See, when night comes, the nocturnal predators come out, forcing Olimar and the Pikmin to take refuge in the sky thanks to their vessels for the night. Remember, though the dolphin is damaged and incapable of spaceflight, hovering in the lower atmosphere is perfectly fine in this damaged state. Any Pikmin not with Olimar will be left behind, so you need to make sure you have either rounded up all the Pikmin, have them planted in the ground, or within the safety of the base. Otherwise, you'll leave them behind and be treated to the tragic sight of the Pikmin fleeing from predators before being eaten. Now, how do you recover the ship parts? Well, most of the time it's simply a matter of trying to figure out how to get the Pikmin to the part or clear a path of obstacles, no matter how big said obstacle is. Don't underestimate the little guys, they're troopers, never giving up or stopping until their task is complete, even if they can't complete it alone. That's where additional numbers come in. You'll need a good number of Pikmin to carry enemies, parts, and make combat easier, and complete many tasks in a timely manner. There's a lot of things the Pikmin can do. Attack enemies, carry objects, build bridges, break down walls, build poles, break geysers open, or even pluck grass to get nectar and become flower Pikmin. Flower Pikmin are great, they'll move and complete jobs faster, and even trip less, more on that in a bit. The Pikmin automatically interact appropriately with the environment when either thrown or swarmed thanks to context-sensitive commands. That's great, it makes the complexity of Pikmin more digestible and beginner-friendly to those new to the real-time strategy genre. You can have up to 100 Pikmin in the field at any given time. Should anything be brought back to the Onion with 100 Pikmin in the field, new Pikmin seeds are still planted, they'll just be inside the Onion, letting you still increase the Pikmin total. If the Pikmin are dismissed, they'll remain stationary and wait unless they're in the proximity of something they can interact with. You'll be able to tell which Pikmin are under your command based on their hue. Dark hue means they're under your command, while lighter hue means they're not. The Pikmin are very good at responding to commands. However, the Pikmin AI has some quirks to it that makes it a little rough around the edges. First off, tripping. As you walk through the overworld, any number of Pikmin can trip. I said earlier it's a nice little character beat that makes the Pikmin feel alive, but in gameplay, it's annoying. This may not seem like a big deal, but a tripped Pikmin can fall behind and end up getting stuck behind a wall or another object. And if you're one Pikmin short at the end of the day, either that Pikmin will be left behind or you have to go and retrieve it. And if you don't want to lose the Pikmin, you may end up stopping for a moment, waiting for the Pikmin to catch up and not fall behind, costing you valuable time. Flower Pikmin mitigates this issue, making it occur less frequently, but Flower Pikmin can still trip too. It makes it more annoying when it does occur because it's supposed to occur less frequently when they're flowers, but they still trip anyway, so then why is it happening? It just makes it more annoying. The Pikmin's pathing for carrying objects could be better. I've had experiences where they get stuck on bridges, forcing a restack, or they take the long route instead of taking the shorter route that's available. It's easy for Pikmin to slip off edges. Flower Pikmin lose their flowers and degrade down to buds or leaves at the slightest shake off enemies. It's very common to have a single Pikmin suck up an entire drop of nectar. When you dismiss the Pikmin, they split up into groups, but sometimes the groups are too close together depending on the environment. So when you try and whistle in one group, you get stragglers from another group, meaning you need to waste more time dismissing them repeatedly until you get the ideal group you wanted in the first place. These rough spots aren't enough to be infuriating, but they're enough to be annoying in this game. There aren't any rough spots with having the Pikmin fight enemies. I'm happy to say that. Combat in this game is handled by either throwing Pikmin onto the enemies where they'll grab onto them, or having the Pikmin swarm the enemies and they'll grab onto them that way. Combat in this game is short but sweet. There's a real push and pull dynamic between the enemies and the player. The enemies can be stunned by either throwing or swarming the Pikmin at them with proper timing. And when an enemy is stunned, that's when you can lay on the real damage for a quick kill. And for skilled players, getting through with very few Pikmin deaths. And it warms my heart when I get through combat with no Pikmin deaths. But the same is true for the enemies. They can shake off the Pikmin and stun the tiny creatures, and that's when the Pikmin casualties skyrocket. You can prevent this by whistling back the Pikmin at the right time, so it's up to you. Do you whistle the Pikmin back early to prevent them from getting stunned, or do you let them hang on to get extra damage and risk killing the enemy before they shake off the Pikmin to save time? Or do you even fight enemies to begin with? Fighting enemies rewards you with pellets, their corpses for growing more Pikmin, and a safer path back to base. But it does take time away from your day, so if you want to be more efficient, you could try distracting the enemy while Pikmin carry the loot back to base, or just ignore them and take a different path. It's good to have tons of different options and uses for the different types of Pikmin. Those types of Pikmin being red, yellow, and blue. Red Pikmin are the fighters, doing extra damage to enemies and are immune to fire. Yellow Pikmin are lighter and can reach higher ledges for puzzle solving and retrieving parts. The yellow Pikmin can also carry these bomb rocks to destroy walls or throw them at enemies. Blue Pikmin are the only ones that can enter water and are thus most capable of handling water obstacles, so anytime water is involved it means it's time to use the blues. When it comes to Pikmin balance and usage, yellow Pikmin are definitely underused, with reds being overused. Because of the red Pikmin's extra damage, it makes them the preferred choice for combat, and since there's plenty of enemies, not to mention boss fights, red Pikmin will end up being your first choice for these situations. The yellow Pikmin's abilities meanwhile are not only situational, but has issues. The yellow Pikmin's higher throw is situational, it's only used a handful of times whenever you need to retrieve an object that's up on a higher ledge. When it comes to using bomb rocks against enemies, it's a pain. Against smaller enemies, the bombs are strong enough for kills, but in large groups of small enemies, I often find myself getting caught in the blast because said enemies move closer towards Olimar. They're also easy to kill normally, so I can just swarm or throw Pikmin and deal with them for little trouble. For large enemies, the bomb rock is good for an initial strike, but afterwards, unless I'm sacrificing a Pikmin, having the Pikmin throw additional bomb rock is difficult, it takes time, and is unreliable. This is why you're better off just swarming an enemy. In the same ambush that I can use a bomb rock in, I can ambush the enemy for a quick and easy result with few Pikmin deaths, and is more consistent than attacking with bomb rocks. Using bomb rocks on walls works fine, just don't go throwing Pikmin too fast. Olimar throws the Pikmin closest to him, and if you have any other Pikmin mixed in with bomb Pikmin, you may end up throwing a Pikmin at bomb rocks that's about to blow up. As for the blue Pikmin, they may sound situational like yellow Pikmin, but there's a lot of bodies of water to navigate and find parts dwelling within. And if there's any enemies residing inside the water, you will need the blue Pikmin in order to fight them in their habitat, so they'll end up being used very frequently. Utilizing the different Pikmin strengths is how you're going to make progress in the game and bringing back shift parts to the dolphin in order to beat the game's time limit. Ah yes, the 30-day time limit. Pikmin 1's most intimidating aspect. Which I completely get, not everyone likes the restrictions time limit imposes. On my very own first playthrough of Pikmin years ago, I ran out of time. The time limits are common elements of real-time strategy games. They're very useful for making players go on the offensive to take risks and utilize more offensive units. The key is easing players into a time limit, and Pikmin does a good job introducing you to the time limit. The first day doesn't have one, so you can take all the time you need to get acquainted with the game and its mechanics. And the actual time limit is broken into days. Each day lasts roughly 13.5 minutes. In that time, you want to shoot for at least one part per day. may sound intimidating, but there are ways to make it easy for first timers. Now, there are a total of 30 missing ship parts, but only 25 are needed for the normal ending, meaning 5 are optional, so you have some wiggle room within your 30-day time limit to retrieve all missing ship parts for the dolphin before Olimar, yeah, that. When it comes to recovering parts, the one that should take precedence over all others is the whimsical radar, as it restores the map functionale, allowing you to see the terrain of surrounding other ship parts and plan accordingly. Second, if things ever go bad, on the file select screen, you can rewind to a previous day with your army restored to their numbers of that day. Third, levels are compact and open-ended, meaning things aren't spaced far apart, allowing you to reach ship parts quickly and even multitask. So while I have one group of Pikmin break down a wall, I can have a second group of Pikmin carry back this ship part, letting me meet my quota for the day and progress further into the level at the same time. With the open-ended level design, I can try getting ship parts in a different order and experiment to discover the optimal route. Fourth, you never have to worry about running out of Pikmin entirely. Should you have a Pikmin extinction event, the day will just end prematurely with the onion producing a single seed the following day. You can soldier on and regrow your numbers if you want, or try that rewinding trick I mentioned earlier. It's entirely possible to recover multiple ship parts in a single day, and it's a great feeling when you're able to successfully find and retrieve several dolphin parts. It's the same euphoria that I get when I make a plan for the day and carry it out to completion. Or if you can't finish it in a single day, you at least get that sense of progress when I accomplish a lot. It's also very fulfilling to return ship parts and watch the dolphin being restored from a wreck to a complete spaceship. On the flip side, when there's joy and accomplishment, there comes anguish and failure. It's one of the most aggravating parts if you run out of time in the middle of a retrieval and fall just short of making that time limit. Confounded, it is annoying and I hate it when it happens. I don't want to turn in for the night, I want to keep working. Just give me a couple more minutes, please. At the end of each day, you'll be treated to a report of your day's work. How many ship parts there are left, number of Pikmin grown, Pikmin casualties, and Olimar's journal to provide hints about the Pikmin and enemy behavior. I already mentioned the character moments and introspection Olimar does, but there's also gameplay hints. It's pointing out things like sheer grubs can eat bridges, you try ambushing bulbors from behind, or that Pikmin can naturally become flower Pikmin if left in the ground long enough, or that red Pikmin are immune to fire. And these reports are good for feedback, letting you know how many Pikmin you've started with, how many you grew, how many ship parts you still need to collect, showing how good of a job you're doing and the progress you're making. Graphically speaking, this was released in 2001, a few months after the GameCube launched, and showed what the GameCube was capable of. Smoother curved models, no sharp edges that were common on the N64, and no slowdown. The Nintendo Switch version smooths out the textures, font on the HUD, resolution improvements, widescreen support, all that good stuff, running at a consistent frame rate of 30 frames per second. The Wii version also had widescreen support, but the cleanup isn't as good as the Switch version, but it's still a fine looking version. But even without the Switch cleanup, I still think the original Pikmin looks very good. The game has a very bright color palette, letting things pop and stick out against the lush nature aesthetic. Which, I hope you like grassy greens and tan browns of nature. This game has a lot of them. The developers used a garden for inspiration, and it feels like only a garden was used. No other nature biomes, no other seasonal changes. It's only a garden, and that can get a little monotonous after a while. At least it makes the characters stand out. You can see all the different Pikmin run and move independently. There's the Mario 128 technology at work, and the world is loading in with no popping either. And the designs for this game are unique. Creatures like the Bulborb, Snitchbug, and Burrowing Snagger have stood out from other Nintendo's creatures over the years, unless the game's graphics still look good thanks to their unique design and art style. While I do wish there was more variety in the nature aesthetic, the game's 5 areas do have different looks and feels to them, and since there's only 5 areas to explore, what do you say we go over them? Impact Site. The game's tutorial area, and the ideal location to grow your Pikmin numbers, as it is the safest place in the game with little enemies and offers multiple ways to grow lots of Pikmin and lots of different ways to make them flower Pikmin. There's multiple high-numbered pellets here, and the pearly clam that don't put up much of a fight will give you lots of Pikmin for returning them to the onion. There's also 2 unique encounters here with the Mamuta and Gulix. The Mamuta creature you can encounter doesn't actually hurt Pikmin, it just plants them and makes them flowers. And the Gulix creature is primarily a water enemy for blue Pikmin to fight, so it's pretty easy to beat if you attack it with blue Pikmin. If you're ever low on Pikmin numbers, don't be afraid to come here and spend time growing your numbers. And in a game like this with a time limit, it's good to have a safe area to practice in and grow your numbers if you're ever struggling. Forest of Hope. This is the first real area of the game. It's broken up into 2 sections, before and after getting blue Pikmin. Before you get the blue Pikmin, everything revolves around the center of the level. Once you get the blue Pikmin and gain access to the outer sections, it gets progressively more difficult. Yellow Pikmin and bomb rocks are introduced here, and they're used pretty well throughout the level. The Armored Cannon Beetle and Burrowing Snagger both need blue Pikmin in order to reach them, and that appropriately restricts them for when the player has grown enough skill to face them. Restricting the more dangerous areas lets the area feel safe, and the music does a good job inspiring hope. Fitting, given its namesake. The only part I dislike is this one odd bulb board by the shock absorber. For whatever reason, its hitbox is glitched to prevent you from being able to swarm, so every time I fight this one, I always manage to lose Pikmin. Other than that, it's a pretty solid area with no complaints. Forest Navel, I want to like this area more, but I'm just not a fan of it. For starters, the Forest Navel is the glitchiest area in the game. I've had encounters with the puff stool where this thing just clips Pikmin through the floor like it's nothing. I've had Pikmin get stuck on the ramps carrying things back. Pikmin get stuck in the bridges and clip through the floor sometimes too. The Pikmin pathing AI gets confused about the quickest path, and instead of taking the safe and short path through these bomb walls I cleared, they decide to go the long way around through these glitchy ramps. There's the lever part. Oh boy, the lever part. Getting the Pikmin up there isn't the problem, it's getting it down. It's just high enough for it to tilt as it falls and gets stuck in this tilted state. And I've had past playthroughs where it gets stuck in this unmovable state and forces a reset of the day. That's just great. Didn't happen this playthrough, but it's still just as annoying that it can't happen and worries me every time I have to go get it. Oh, and there's only 2 bomb rock locations in this whole area, so if you want to clear out those bomb walls for a faster and safer path, every day starts the same. Grab bomb rocks and clear out the walls, and there's not enough bombs to get through all the walls, so it'll go on for multiple days and it gets repetitive. And it's here we get introduced to the most annoying Pikmin enemy, Wally Hops. Oh, I'm sure this frog looks innocent enough, but don't let it fool you. Behind those eyes is a cold-blooded killer. What appears to be a simple jump and crush attack can kill dozens of Pikmin if you're not careful. Instead of swarming Wally Hops like other enemies, you're better off throwing Pikmin at them. Swarming otherwise makes it very easy for the Pikmin to get stunned and crushed beneath the Wally Hop's girthy body. I'm telling you, this bad boy can kill so many Pikmin. Oh, and did I mention that if the Wally Hop's health reaches 0 in the air, it can still kill Pikmin while landing? So fighting these guys is pretty much difficult no matter what. But the biggest threat a Wally Hop poses is that it's just a time eater. And in a game about time management, that's the real threat fighting this thing poses. It's a shame these annoyances prevent me from liking this area as a whole. I like the Forest Navel's aesthetics. This one section with dark shadows and mushrooms providing the cool blue light makes it stand out compared to the other luscious green landscapes that make up the other areas. I like getting the parts that aren't glitched, like the gravity jumper, analog computer. Encountering the bread bug and getting the space flow is unique. I don't think I've ever encountered any enemy in a video game that I've beat in the game of tug of war in order to get a shift part for. B. Longless is a cool boss that gives Yellow Pikmin more purpose. Since his body is high up for most of the fight, it's one of the few enemies to take advantage of the Yellow Pikmin's higher throws in combat. The music's nice, makes me think of saunas and geysers, appropriate with the many fire geysers here. I want to like the Forest Navel more, but these glitches and shortcomings make it my least favorite area in the game by far. The Distant Spring, the largest and most open area in the game. Unlike the other areas, there's very little walls requiring bombs, so there's a lot of different ways to find and gather the vast quantity of ship parts here. The open space and level design allow for a lot of flexibility in the approaches, letting you experiment with order and efficiency. There's tons of water here, giving blue Pikmin plenty to do and water puzzles to solve. Oh, and in case you didn't get enough of Wally Hops in the Forest Navel, the Distant Spring is home to yellow Wally Hops. They're pretty much just regular Wally Hops again, but yellow and have more health. So everything I said about regular Wally Hops applies here, but now they take longer to kill, because Wally Hops are just so much fun to fight beforehand, so let's do it again. Other than that, the puzzles of the ship parts is neat. I really enjoy getting the Kronos Reactor. It really tests your knowledge of Pikmin by either making some tricky throws with yellow Pikmin to get it down and have blue Pikmin carry it, or using the candy pop buds to switch Pikmin colors to retrieve it. The environment is varied with spots of water, enemies, stumps, and rocks to break up the monotony. It's also home to the game's super boss, the Smoky Prog. You can only encounter this creature by destroying its egg before day 15. Afterwards, the egg disappears. It's really just a hard fight to increase your Pikmin numbers, but if you do decide to fight the Smoky Prog, be ready for war. The Fiend is only weak at the front of its face. It emits a poisonous gas that instantly kills any Pikmin caught in, and has the ability to draw any planted Pikmin from the ground. Beating this thing is tough and will seriously test your Pikmin skill in combat, but if you do manage to beat it, it is satisfying. The pearl it drops gives you more Pikmin than any other object in the game. But even without the super boss and the Smoky Prog, I really like Distant Spring. I think it's the best area in the game. And once we gathered the last of the ship parts, it's onto the final area, fittingly called the Final Trial, which is really nothing more than a puzzle in a boss arena. I do enjoy the puzzle for how it manages to use all 3 types of Pikmin to complete it. The music for this area is fitting, and it has an almost finished final stretch march to it. A great prelude before the final boss, Emperor Bulblax. Emperor Bulblax is fittingly a large and difficult fight, armed with a tongue attack that'll gobble up tons of Pikmin with ease, and a stomp attack he'll begin using once his health is low enough. The ultimate predator, and conceptually fits the nature theme the game has been using. And as a boss fight, this is a good final boss. Pikmin can't grab his back, so you have to attack from the front, forcing you to face him head on. Making a good push and pull dynamic like the other enemies, where you want to throw the Pikmin, but you need to space yourself to avoid losing the Pikmin when Bulblax attacks. The stomp attack is a good addition to shake things up and keeps you moving, and a quick kill method that is consistent with the rest of the enemies in the game, where you utilize the bomb rocks to stun him and attack freely and openly. A culmination of everything you've learned in combat. And technically, Emperor Bulblax is optional. Even if you can't beat him, Olimar will still escape at this point, and you'll still receive the normal ending. But hey, if you made it this far, you can beat Emperor Bulblax. Some good bomb throws or good Pikmin attacks will defeat him, and reward you with the final ship part, Olimar's Piggy Bank, giving you the best ending. After completing the game, if you want additional content, you have Challenge Mode for extra game and to test your Pikmin metal. Challenge Mode is an alternate game mode that unlocks once you have found all the different Pikmin types. Each area from the main game is added as you gain access to it. The goal in Challenge Mode is to grow as many Pikmin as possible within the time limit. Areas from the main game are reused with alternate level design. Items and enemies are rearranged to make for new challenges. Forest Navel doesn't have many enemies anymore. It's predominantly occupied with pellet posies to find and carry back. And hey, props for removing the ramps and lollipops. I can actually relax and have fun playing this area now. The mode provides a good challenge for those wanting to test their ability to grow Pikmin and not have to worry about getting ship parts. Though I personally prefer the main game over Challenge Mode, just because the main game has more flexibility built into it. Every run begins with the same amount of Pikmin, and that limits my options until I get the numbers up to a decent amount. Whereas the main game is a bit more open-ended since you can retrieve the dolphin parts in different ways. And with that, we've reached the end of Pikmin 1's content. This is a short game. If you use all 30 days, it'll take about 6 hours to complete, and even faster for a more skilled player. This was originally released very early into the GameCube's lifespan, and while it's understandable why it's short, I can imagine for those looking for more content that that's a problem. I don't personally think this short length is a problem since I find the game highly replayable. In fact, I think that's the best way to describe Pikmin 1. It's short but replayable. There are tons of different ways to play and gather all 30 ship parts. It creates a real dilemma, and that's the key word here, dilemma. It's one of the bedrocks of game design, as dilemmas create risk-reward situations for players with no optimal outcome. In other games, it's things like what starter Pokemon do you pick in Pokemon Red and Blue, what loadout do you want in a first-person shooter, what path do you take in Sonic, when do you punch and punch out. Pikmin is chock full of dilemmas, and that's what creates replayability, as there are tons of different ways that make me think, what if I tried this, or maybe do things that way, I can improve my time and prevent more Pikmin deaths. And this game is great at doing that. It excites me and makes every playthrough feel different and lets me keep enjoying this game no matter how many times I've played it. I've played this game a lot over the years, and I'll happily continue to keep playing it for years to come. I find it fun and gratifying to improve my score, beating the game in as little days as possible, trying new things, growing my Pikmin numbers, and keeping Pikmin alive. My only real gripe with this game is the glitches and quirks of the Pikmin AI. The Switch version ironed out a lot of these glitches and is currently my preferred version of Pikmin 1. There are still the quirks of the Pikmin AI, tripping, and other things that are annoying. I won't harp on it too much, it's the first game of the series, and I can say those quirks are addressed in the sequels. The sequels fine-tune and expand on the mechanics, but there's still merit to playing Pikmin 1. If you want to get into the real-time strategy game genre, Pikmin is an excellent entry point, easing players into the depths and complexity the genre offers while not overwhelming the first timer, and offers something different that you won't get from the rest of Nintendo's library. There is no better time than now to get into Pikmin. All mainline Pikmin games are available on the Switch. You may struggle your first time, but I promise you, if you stick with it, you will succeed. It's well designed, the ability to rewind days lets you recover from failed mistakes without being overly punishing. It's got a real mystique to it that no other game in the series has. It's just a great game. An aged game like all things, but it's still a great game nonetheless. I hope I did a good job explaining why this game captured my heart and hundreds of other players around the world to create a franchise. And to my friend Overlord, if you're watching this, thanks. Thanks for introducing me to one of my favorite games in series. Now, with all that being said, I think our time together for today has come to an end. Let me know what you guys think of Pikmin as a game, as a series, and let me know how you feel about this video. Subscribe, like, dislike, let me know how the audio sounds. Any and all feedback helps and lets me make better videos for you to enjoy. I want to thank you all for being a wonderful audience, and until we meet again, I shall bid you adieu.